My name's Randy Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast. At Mastermind Parenting, we're on a mission to support strong-willed kids and the families that love them.
I've had enough adventure. I have not lacked it in the last 15 years.
Okay, well, that was a perfect place for us to start recording. There you go. There's a little snippet wherever this conversation's meant to go. We've just been sitting here chatting. I'm here with Michaeleen, and we're catching up. And I have an idea what I want to talk about today. And knowing the two of us, my intention that I wrote in my journal was present, alive, fun, connecting.
Okay.
That
I love it.
And because I'm just going to be here with you. And all I know is that anytime I talk to you, I feel like I just attended an actually fun party.
Well, that's good.
I know, because we always have fun just catching up. And afterwards, I always check my energy level. Even on some of our monster dates where we didn't do any recording and we just talked for over 2 hours. And afterwards I'm like, no energy drain. None. I'm good to go. Feeling good. I don't know. How do you feel after our monster talks? Do you feel energy drained?
No, I don't feel energy drained. No.
Yeah.
I feel good. Yeah.
You could say it.
No, I don't. I don't feel that way. No.
Yeah, I always feel good. I always feel good after. Okay, so what my thought was, what I really have been dying to ask you about, but we always want to talk about a million other things. I know you've just slid in the fact that you sort of run a school, or you run a school from your home.
Yes. It is a school. It's 6 kids. So
okay.
But we call it a school. I mean, it feels like
right.
School.
It is a school. Okay. So you run a school out of your home, and anyone else I know that would be running a school for 6 kids out of their home, that would sort of be consuming their life. But for you, you're like, oh, side note, I run a school out of my home, and I'm doing I just flew here. Rosie and I just flew here and we recorded for this French TV show in Canada, and now we're going here. I mean, so it's just oh, side note. So tell me about the school. If you were teaching me a masterclass about why you decided to run a school out of your home, I want to know all about this school.
So I think the school was a very organic thing. I hate using that word, but I think it's a good word to describe it. It was one of those things where it was it took about a year to decide to do it. And it was with another mom, and we could not have the school without the other mom. She's the major driving force of this school. We are partners, no doubt. But she's I tell people, you need a partner. You can't do this by yourself. You need a partner. And we just Rosie was at this little Montessori school here, and it was actually pretty good in the kindergarten. And then the first grade was just it plummeted, and the teacher was really bad. And I spent 3 days there helping out, and I was whoa, what is happening here? This is not helping anybody, helping Rosie.
What was happening?
I mean, I think, and maybe I'm naive to think that this would be different anywhere else. And I actually think it wouldn't be, but unless
part of my question is maybe it wouldn't be different anywhere else, and that still doesn't make certain things okay. And so,
right, exactly. I think it's more probably what I saw and what I responded to is probably kind of a pretty typical schooling experience. I mean, it was kind of similar to my schooling experience, maybe middle school. This was first grade, second grade, third grade. But it was just kids were not being taught how to treat each other right. And it's I can teach Rosie to read. I can teach Rosie to do math. I'm a super nerd, right? I mean, Matt and I just teach her it all the time. That's just us. I'm not worried about that. But I sent her to school kind of for social skills. And it was just wow, these kids have no clue. And this is a Montessori school, right? This These kids have no clue how to treat each other respectfully, kindly, and it was such a waste of time. Like there was just such a waste of time. Like most of the time was spent reprimanding kids and dealing with kids. And I was just like, this is just. So me and another mom who was getting her Montessori guide, and stuff. We just kept saying like, we want to start our own school. We want to start our own school. We should start our own school. And then like last March, so we've been doing it now like a little over a year. She was like, let's do it. Let's start it. And so we started it. And it was crazy.
Awesome.
We took our garage and we like turned it in over spring break and turned it into the school. And the first couple months were really rough. They were really rough. But then we had the summer break and we kind of refined it. And this year has been fantastic. And it's just like, it's, the goals of the school are to teach kids what, Texas has like certain things that have to be taught in like a homeschool setting. Like we want it to be like an official school, but right now it's just like a homeschool co-op, I think legally by the Texas. And literally kids have to learn for 3 hours a day. So that shows you right there how much learning kids are getting in a public school system in Texas. I mean, in the United States, 3 hours a day, basically is what you're doing. Right. And the rest is like, I don't know what's happening, but, so we have in the morning from 9 until 12, the kids work, with this other mom. And then they have lunch outside. And then I come in from 1 to 3 and kind of fill in the gaps, whatever's needed, and also teach them like practical skills. And we do projects and, we kind of work off each other and stuff. And I taught them to read because she's a native Spanish speaker. So I taught the little ones to read, and I'm trying to fill in some math, and I love it. I love it. And like, even though the first couple months were rough, Randy, like that summer while I was working, I missed it. Like I missed it. I wanted it back. Like it is. I told somebody recently, it is the most rewarding thing I've done besides have a kid. It's like 100 times more rewarding than writing a story for NPR. Like 100 times. It's so amazing to see a kid learn to read and like just spending time with them. And to be honest, like 2 hours a day, I was almost spending that like dropping her off and picking her back up in San Francisco. Like riding my bike to get her, hanging out with the parents, riding, like if there's no commute right now for us. And so it's like, I don't feel like I'm spending a lot more time. And in some ways it's really energizing.
Okay. So it's so interesting to me because, when the way I got into this was I would volunteer a lot at school, specifically in Alex's class.
Yeah.
And one of my first places that I volunteered was when they were in, I guess, kindergarten or first grade, when they were, I think it was kindergarten, and they were just learning to read. He had this amazing teacher, and she was just like this beautiful teacher. And she needed parents that would just be listeners that would sit out in the hallway with kids, one by one. So each kid, because it was like 20 something kids in the class. And so that was like one of my very first, when Alec was in kindergarten, one of my very first volunteer jobs I ever did. And I loved it. I would say it was like 30 minutes in the hallway once or twice a week. And these little kids would just come, and I just sat with them, helping them learn how to read, and I got to see their progress,
Yeah.
And so from there, I always volunteered at school in ways where I interacted with the kids,
Right.
to the point that then it became like, because the teachers were all sort of overtaxed, and people would be like, "Do you work here?" But I mean, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had time, and I sort of loved it. And I always loved like I didn't want to like chair a party or,
Right.
God forbid I ever volunteered to be the room mom. Like you were talking about how much we both suck at logistics. Like you do not want me in charge of sending out emails or planning shit. Like I'm awful with that. But I also loved interacting with the kids, like kids, especially little kids. They're so honest.
They're so easy. They're like, and I have to say that like the first couple months were hard because of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm honest, like honestly, like we ended up realizing that we needed to like pick the right parents, right? Because the kids you can deal with. And I think I think people are shocked by the school, like what you described at the beginning, because I think for a lot of parents, children are draining and in these like stresses and these like, you know, like I described in How to Get a Parent at the beginning, like I don't want to be with the kid. I want to be with kids, because I didn't know how to interact with them. But once I learned to interact with Rosie and like learn how to interact with kids, and I started applying the stuff in the book to these other kids, right? Like I told Matt, I was like, you just have to use whatever's in the book, and it works. I was like amazed. I was like, it works fine. And then it becomes rewarding, right? Like being with them is actually this really like energizing, rewarding thing, and it's
Yep.
not this draining thing. And I think that's the key thing is like it's not draining because I know how to be with them in a way that's not like conflictual and not like, in fact, they can be very cooperative and very, and they're way easier than the middle-aged parents.
Yes.
Like,
No,
easier.
I think most teachers will actually say that. Um, I agree. Like, especially once, I didn't realize Mastermind Parenting was being created. But once when I was interacting, when I volunteer at school and I was interacting with the kids, just in the same way that I was interacting with my kids at home, and not natural, and for anyone listening who's like, well, what does that mean? It's like everything that I think you talk about in Hunt Gather Parent, I teach in Mastermind Parenting. It's like we came to this also not knowing how to interact with kids in the way that forms, these connections and this, to use attachment or whatever, secure attachment. I like that term as much as I like executive function.
Yeah, because I actually even like have come to think of that term as like, it's really weird because it's not about attachment. There's no attachment. Right. I mean, I think of that as like the baby that's like attached to you, but it's like, no, it's like a cooperation. It's a two-way street, right? Like attachment, like
when to me, it's connection, because it's like when I'm connected to you and you're connected to me, of course we want to be cooperative.
Right.
And little kids, when you know how to just get on their level, and bring some, I mean, they're so damn funny and honest and ridiculous and curious and engaged.
It's interesting because I've been thinking a lot about like what makes kids want to be on your team. So a lot of Hunt Gather Parent is about this idea that like we aren't working together with our kids, right? We're like on opposing teams all the time. It's like a parent trying to convince the child to do something and the child kind of trying to convince the parent, and there's this like
Hi everyone. If this is the beginning of our conversation, we're not sure if it's the beginning because a week ago we started this conversation and Houston had just had a huge storm and then we lost power. And so we may have a part 1 and a part 2, or we may just have a part 1. We're not really sure, but we'll see. So tell the story about what was going on at this school that you were sending Rosie to that prompted you into starting your own school.
I mean, I think, after writing Hunt Gather Parent, like I really realized that school was about socializing, right? Like I think I said something like Matt and I can teach Rosie to read and do math because we're just such nerds, and we read and do math all the time. Like Matt was even last night like, okay, but we didn't figure out like, how 8/16 is like a 1/2, and he's like, just like on some just 7:00 conversation around our dinner table. So I was like, I don't know. I think writing the book and traveling made me realize that like we worry so much about kids' education, right? But at the end of the day, what really in America makes kids like happy and functional is their like mental health, right? And I hadn't really thought about like, okay, well, how do I ensure Rosie has good mental health? And a lot of that is learning to socialize in a way that makes you feel good, right? Learning to treat people well and cooperate with people, and learning to find friends that treat you well, and friends that are kind and make you feel good after you're with them, right? And I think what I realized was the Montessori school, and I think a lot of schools, like now in retrospect, they were not teaching Rosie that part of life. This school was, the kids were not learning to be kind to each other. They were not learning how to help each other and work together. And I mean, there's a lot, people have written a lot about this. I mean, school is in America is this very competitive, kind of anti-cooperative environment, right? I mean, part of schooling is to teach you to be motivated by grades, which is like a ranking. And so that was kind of the impetus for starting the school, was like, I want to create an environment where Rosie, well, first of all, also retains her love of learning, which I felt like a lot of kids lose in school. But then two, where we can create this environment where kids actually learn to treat each other well, to respect each other, respect the adults, work together and cooperate, all the things that are in Hunt Gather Parent. Like, can we create a school that does that, and treat animals well, treat the environment well, treat our house well, treat, and enjoy that, find joy and reward in that. And so that was really what the primary goal. And a lot of the first couple months of the school, and even when a new kid comes to the school, is teaching the kid that. Like, kids don't know. They come to our school with two skills that they don't have. Is one, how to treat other people with kindness and respect, and treat them in a way that's not conflictual and makes them feel bad and starts arguments. So I teach them that. And then two, I teach them how to take initiative, which is another whole topic. But schooling for a lot of kids that don't have this at their home doesn't teach them to take initiative. And that's a huge part of it too. But yeah, most of it is this social aspect, really. Is that what I said? I can't remember, but I think I did.
Yeah. Well, you said you were there at the school and you noticed like the kids were terrible to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the teachers.
Yeah. Like they're just, it's just people acting out. And so I just loved how concise it was. Like, we send her to school, like we can teach her how to do math and read. I don't think most parents are thinking I could teach it. I think most of us think we're not equipped to homeschool.
Yeah.
But really, you know how to read. And
yeah. And you know your kid better than anybody. I mean, that's also a thing I've learned having this school, is like, learning really happens when the person doing the teaching, like, knows the child and like knows how they learn. And like, after, like, if we have a new kid come in, it takes me like a month to really figure out, okay, how does this child learn? Where is she at in reading or whatever I'm doing? And then that's when the learning really happens, right? Is when you have the synchrony between the teacher and the child. I mean, to me, I think a lot of parents feel like, and I heard a lot of this during the pandemic, is like, they don't know how to interact with their child in a way that's not conflictual. Right. And a lot of the homeschooling problems during the pandemic was like, there was conflict between the parent and the child. Right. And there were lots of fights and arguments, and you can't learn in that way. Right. So it boils down to really knowing how to like interact with your child in this very kind of productive way. Right. And so once you learn that, teaching them is easy.
It's so interesting. It's like, I think one of the main issues with kids learning and parents thinking they don't know what to do, like all the time I get, during the pandemic, it was homeschool issues. But all the time it's homework issues, right. I taught some free class not that long ago. And after the class, it was all about like how to end homework battles. And it was about like how to help your kids have agency when it comes to their work. And,
Yeah.
and so I was coaching parents. And after the call, I said to Lindsay, who, works with me and is on my team, she's like my co-parent. And I was like, who the hell came up with that topic? Like, I didn't even like dealing with that in my own life. So why did I do, I was like, why? That's the last thing I really want to coach parents on. And Lindsay said, but we needed it and it was really good. And it's stuff that you take for granted because you've been doing it for so long, because, the way we handled school, it wasn't conflictual. And so, and my kids had a lot of agency, and so I was like, ugh, well, don't come up with topics like that anymore because I'm exhausted. And anyway, she says that is the resource she sends the most to people because it's such a she's like, I know you were mad at me after that call, but I send more people that resource of that class, and people watch it over and over and over again because we don't know how to help our kids be successful, to have autonomy and agency over their work.
Take initiative.
Parents. And I think so I've just kind of been like curious. And whenever I coach a parent about something that's school related, I've noticed that they resort in their mind back to when they were in school. So if their kid doesn't get their homework, I'm like, who cares? They're in elementary school. Homework's stupid in the first place.
Right.
Who cares if they don't do their homework? A lot of times the teachers aren't even grading the homework. They're just trying to get in.
Go to teachers in elementary school and you can say like, I don't want my child to have homework. Like this is not helping them learn. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of it is like, kind of like, I think you're exactly right. That they go into this mindset of like, what was my high school, middle school like? Because that's what they can remember, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of it is watching the child and then adjusting to that, right? If you're doing something, it's just like in the book, like if you're doing something that's making things hard and conflictual and like the child is not learning, then maybe stop doing that. Right. And you're exactly right. Like in middle school or elementary school, you don't need homework. And like, you can adjust. But
it's almost
you
like
as a parent, you have power over learning. I think that's the other thing that parents don't realize is that like the government does not know extraordinarily well how to teach your child. And they definitely don't know how to teach your child. They have suggestions and I think the reading scores and the math scores right now in America explicitly tell us that the government is not doing a fantastic job of teaching children.
Right.
So you as a parent have power to say like, look, this doesn't work for my kid. And be on the kid's side instead of the teacher's side or the like system side, right? Like that's what I feel like. It's like I'm on Lizzie's side.
I'm the same way. I mean, if I could tell you, it's unbelievable some of the things that I coach parents on where they're being traumatized. They're being traumatized by their kid's school. The kid is being traumatized by the school, and they don't speak up because this is my hypothesis. I don't know if you'll agree. They're not speaking up because I had this one mom and she had anxiety. Like she was like basically having PTSD every single day when she would go to pick up her kid because and he was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And the teacher or the teacher's aide would come out to the car and give her a report on basically how bad her kid had been that day in front of her kid. And so they were being, she was being put in this position and the kid was being put in this position and she couldn't think clearly. I mean, she was in a state and she felt like she was constantly being judged, in trouble. I think because the way most of us were conditioned is, it was that authoritarian
That's right.
model. And so you feel like, oh God, what did they do today? But
Right.
you really feel like in your body, you're
Yeah.
feeling like you're the kid back in 6th grade or
Yeah.
4th grade that's in trouble yourself, that forgot
That's
to do
right.
your homework or teacher called you
Yeah.
out. And so the parents are not in their parental authority. Like they're
But
not
they
in their
have
pack leadership.
agency. Right,
Right. They're
exactly. And
not.
that, like, I
Yeah.
know. And I mean, I think you're right. I think it's the way we've been conditioned, that the teacher
Hmm.
has like all this power, and the goal is to like please the teacher and do what the teacher says. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't respect the teacher and stuff, but I'm just saying it should be a cooperative. I mean, I think in many instances it needs to be cooperative, and it's like, well, what does this child need? And like clearly that teacher is not respecting that parent, right? I mean, think about that. That's not respecting that parent and that child. And so
No,
it's like,
teachers are humans. And so the teacher was getting it wrong. And
yeah,
I said, I mean, I'll tell you, this mom, she went through our program in January. So just January. And she's sending her kid to a different school next year.
well, that's
And
good.
thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. And we slowly kind of, because like you don't want people to come in and for to be like, that school sounds terrible, you need to pull your kid out of there. But after hearing, like, I could only bite my tongue for long enough, and I was like, number one, stop allowing other people to talk bad about your kid to you in front of your kid.
Yes.
Like,
I mean,
that's a
that's
terrible.
basic, like, but also that, I mean, that kind of gets at what I was saying about the Montessori school. Like, that's basic social skills in terms of teaching children to be respectful, right? Teaching a person to be respectful. She's not showing any of that. She's going against all of kind of the basic.
Yeah, she's not being respectful. You've got to model it. So if you're
Yeah,
talking
and if
about
the
this
parent is
kid,
letting them do that, if the parent is letting the teacher do that, then the parent is also not modeling it, right? I mean, that's
right,
like
right.
some of the reason of pulling out Rosie was like, look, these people aren't respecting you, they're not respecting me, they're not, and like, we can find a better way, right? The model, the agency of like, when people don't treat me right, I don't care if they are the teachers or the principals, everyone, if they're not treating me respectfully, then we need to go somewhere else, right? And like,
Hmm.
um but I think you're right. I think we have this sense, and this gets back to some of the core like weird psychology that we are, because one of the things that makes us weird, and one of the traits of Western society, Western culture, is that we respect and value the opinions of strangers more than our families. And I think this is a perfect example where like I have to catch myself, like, am I valuing the teacher who's an outsider to the family more than like what my child is telling me, or more than what I'm, how I respect my family, right? And so we allow like these authoritative figures to have this great influence on our psychology and on what we do. And some of what I'm learning and what I've learned is like to pull back and say, wait a second, I'm here for Rosie. I'm here to help her and get an education. And do I trust and value my opinion of who Rosie is, where she's learning, where she's at, what she's doing, more or less than like some teacher, you know? And but at the same time, I mean, letting somebody disrespect you like that that's a that's a skill that I've had to learn not to do, as an adult. I mean, I still work on it.
Well, that's what I mean. It's been amazing to see this woman's progress, because not only is she no longer in a PTSD state, like she's a complete badass now. And I mean, she is. You should have heard her when she made the decision
Yeah.
to go tour, and this was a private school. And I was like, okay. And I know what neighborhood she lives in. I was like, unless I'm mistaken, I think there's really, really good public schools. Like people move to your neighborhood to go to the public schools. Is there a reason why y'all haven't checked it out? And there wasn't. It just was, her husband had thought, he had grown up going to whatever church school. And so and I was like, well, maybe go check it out. So she went and she checked it out, and she was like, the kids were so relaxed. It
Mm,
was, she's like, it wasn't that crazy. Nobody can make a peep when you're walking through the halls.
right.
Like it felt like a place where kids were,
Yeah,
like it just,
right,
and
right.
so, and then fast forward to the end of the year when she went in for the parent teacher conferences and we sort of like prepped her for it. And it was like, you're going to have boundaries
Yeah,
and you're not open to having these people tell you who your kid is when you have
yeah,
now changed the way you're doing things at home and you've seen an entirely different child come to
right,
life
right,
because he doesn't have to have his dukes up anymore. He doesn't have to be fighting at school to prove that he's not a mean kid, fighting at home to prove that
right,
he's not a mean kid.
right.
Like he's feeling safe finally. And
Yeah,
so you've seen who he is. So don't go in there waiting, hoping that these ladies aren't going to badmouth your kid.
right.
Like it just, so we really prepared her and she ended up like going to the principal. Like she called, I said, you sound like you're Aaron Brockoviching this school. And she said, she said, she goes, oh yeah, you can call me Aaron Brock a bitch because I am not putting,
The
I'm
mama
telling
bear.
you,
You
she
can. We
became
all
a
have the mama bear
mama
in us,
bear,
right? Like it's
mama
like.
bear. Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that when you were talking about like she had PTSD, you like you felt your stomach, and I've been like paying attention to this kind of feeling in my stomach that I get, and I've been calling it like the rejection feeling, like the
Mm-hmm.
potential of rejection. I think I've been like conditioned in these moments where I'm gonna feel like some other class, like economic class, some other clique, some group, some so whoever it is like gonna reject me in the in the moment. It's very like I'm being very like figurative here, right? Like it's not actually gonna happen. I mean, but like that's I get that feeling in my gut, and it comes from this like very long conditioning of like not feeling good enough, not feeling like friends are going to accept me, dealing with mean girls, dealing with these teachers that
Yeah.
are like, being disrespectful to me, and like and it's deep in me, and it influences my mood, right? Like because when you get this like gut kind of punch to your stomach, it's like, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't feel good, or like, but I've started saying, oh, that's just my rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just like potential rejection
Mm-hmm.
happening, but it's not like I'm an
Mm-hmm.
adult and I'm not being rejected, and I have friends and I have a great family and I have a great job, and like I'm not being rejected, but it's like the residual part of my brain like preparing for that hurt in that like time when the teacher did badmouth me, and the time when the mean girl did say something mean, and like all of those hurts that added up over my childhood and my early adult life, they're still in there, but just being able to like
I
label it
think
as
for
that has
all of
really
us.
helped me. It really has helped
Mm-hmm.
me be like, that's the past.
Yeah.
I hear you, rejection stomach. And maybe also it's like a learning signal of like, maybe this isn't the person I want to be working with. Maybe this isn't the route I want to go down if I'm carrying kind of this association with them. Maybe something is not right here. Like maybe you need a different school. Maybe you need to say something.
Yeah, your body, it's like the wisdom of these bodies. They're
Yeah.
whispering, they're telling it. And I think it is helpful to name, when you find one of those deeply buried parts
Yeah.
that, right? And
Like
it's
feelings
like,
inside.
yeah, yeah. But it's like, oh, and you take the time to like understand the rejection
Yeah,
part. Where does it come
right.
from? Like this isn't actually happening, but there's something right now in this situation that is reminding my body of another time
That's right.
that,
And maybe
right?
like, and instead of just reacting to it, right? Instead of just like,
Right.
because I think these body sensations are very, like you said, like deep, and like, and I tend to just react to it. Like my reaction to the rejection punch is to like, oh no, what do I need to do to fix it? What do I need to stop the rejection? Oh, like I'm doing something wrong and I got to fix it, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
like my like knee jerk reaction. That's how I handled it my whole life, right? But now like I'm like, wait a second, maybe it's not me. Like, or maybe I don't want to fix it. Maybe this is like a sign of like, like, it's like, instead of just reacting, like to stop and kind of pause and then like,
Right. Like maybe
think
this is
about
my
it for a
spidey
minute.
sense.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe this is my spidey senses that are saying, not your person. Like
Right.
this, something's out of
Right. Or
alignment.
this, maybe,
Like let's, yeah.
actually, maybe this isn't so important.
Yeah.
Maybe this is, or maybe I can just back off from this. I think there was a Fresh Air with Emma Stone, and she talked about this feeling in her gut. And she talked about like, because, actors are amazing because they have all these abilities to feel their bodies inside and stuff that we don't, like, because that's their skill. And,
Mm-hmm.
and she talked about how when she was younger, you know, she kind of, she felt that, what you start, like that stomach punch, which I call like the rejection feeling, the rejection's coming feeling. And she talked about how she's learned as she's gotten older to kind of like, maybe I move away from the things that give me that,
Mm. Maybe
and
I listen. Maybe right. Maybe instead of making it mean that there's something wrong with me, maybe I take the cue that there's something wrong with this situation and I need
yeah,
to go away from it.
maybe this
Yeah.
isn't the right for me. Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of reacting to it of like, how can I fix it? It's more like, this is a sign that maybe this person isn't
Well,
listening to me or seeing me for who I am and
see,
seeing
so
what I'm
this,
doing.
I mean, this is the conversation with my mastermind moms all the time where we talk about things like this all the time, right? The body whispers
Yeah.
and finding those parts, those like exiled parts that, we've been protecting for a long time and we have all these different ways. And a lot of times it's people pleasing and
Yeah.
it's,
That rejection coming is like, that's exactly right. It's a signal. It's been a signal to me to please that person. Right. It's
yeah,
like,
that's a
like
protective
rejection's
part,
coming.
right?
I need to please them. Right. And I think that you've summed it up. Like I've started just the last like couple months, just being like, wait a second, maybe this, I don't need to please.
Right,
Maybe actually like this is a time for me not to please. And it's just
right.
like the mom you're talking about. She was trying to please this teacher and fix whatever problem this teacher was saying. And in fact, she didn't need to do that. She needed to like protect her kid and like
Have
this was a signal
boundaries
to
and
her
learn
that
all
this was
those.
the wrong
Yeah,
situation for her kid and for
right,
her.
right. And she started to listen and then she became a true leader in
Yeah.
her, like she's a leader for herself, she's a leader for her kid's doing amazing. He feels that. I mean, you know what it's like
Oh
when you
yeah.
feel like, okay, the clowns are running the circus, there is no leader. It
That's
makes
right.
everyone feel insecure. But what we always say is we're learning all these things as adults. And what we always say is this is what we should have learned in school.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes. And that's what I'm saying about
this.
like respecting. I mean, we should. Right, exactly. Clearly, that teacher is not teaching those kids to respect each other because she's not respecting the kid in front of the mom, right? And this is about learning how to treat people well and with respect. And when people don't do that, how do you handle it? If somebody's not treating you with respect, do you try to please them? That's what I was taught. Oh, I'll fix it, right? Like, or do you say, hey, that's not respectful? Or do you just leave them alone? Or do you change the situation? Like, that's what I was saying. Like, this Montessori school was not teaching Rosie this, and I wanted to create a space where we could teach
Well, I know
her that.
there's some people who would be listening to this and they're like, "Oh yeah, Montessori schools are, but my kid's school." So, I want to hear from you. What do you mean, you kind of already touched upon it. But like, what do you think our schools, like just our school system, the government, this government has proven that they're not that great at teaching kids.
At least right
What,
now.
yeah. And so what do you think that mainstream schools, whether they're Montessori, traditional, whatever, our mainstream school system, what do you think the main thing is that they're getting wrong, if you had to kind of say it in a nutshell?
I mean, oh gosh. I mean, right now, the system, I don't think parents realize how, I mean, and again, it depends on a lot on the teacher, right? Like
Right.
that some teachers do teach kids, but this is not a Montessori, non-Montessori thing. Because Rosie was at a very expensive private school in San Francisco, and in many ways it was worse. Like
Mm-hmm.
worse. And like, so I know that this, and I know a lot about the public elementary school here and the kids, and this, they're not teaching them this. Okay. I mean, I think the biggest problem with schooling in America are a couple of things. Like it just, there's no autonomy. There's very, very, very little autonomy, right? And I also think a lot of kids just don't learn the way that we teach kids. I mean, in many cultures, like this Western form of schooling is like there's like it's totally separate from what cultures think is actually teaching and educating children. Like it's its own. It's not the same. There's no overlap, right? If you talk to like some Inuit families, what like they see in like Western schools, that's nothing to do with the way children learn. Right? You're just missing the elements of how children naturally learn, right?
What
I
do
mean, this
their
is
schools? What did the schools in the communities that you spent time with from Hunt Gather Parent? What did their school systems or education or schools look like?
I mean, it's interesting. It's a mix because Western society has come in and said this is what schooling is, and a lot of governments have taken that. So, but what I'm saying is, even when they have like a Western kind of styled school, the parents will tell you, but this is how you actually children learn, and it's not the West,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, and the Inuit parents were very clear about this. It's like we have this school, the Western style, and but that's not how children learn. This is how you teach children to learn. This is how you educate children. And some of these communities now are trying to like mix it, right? They're trying to, because for a long time it was like, I mean, up in the Arctic, like Western society went in and physically forced them to put their kids in these boarding schools, right? It was this horrible thing. I mean, it happened
Mm-hmm.
in the lower, in the United States too, right? And so it was this like actually forced education. But since that's like been rolled back, thank goodness, like a lot of Inuit communities are saying like we're gonna take more agency over our education, and we're gonna blend it more with like an actual traditional learning style, right? Where observation and hands-on learning is privileged and prioritized over instruction, right?
Mm.
That's, I mean, if you look, that's how children have learned for 100,000 years. It's not so for instance, in the Maya community, I went to a couple classes, hieroglyphic classes, and I went to a couple dance classes, and they were so fascinating because like the dance class, there were no words. The man just got
Mm.
up to the front, and there was like kids of from like 6 to like 14, and he just starts doing the dance routine, and he just does it again. No words, no words. And then like he'd come around, and as the kids did it, he would kind of move their bodies and maybe whisper something to them, and like, but no words. And then I get back home, and Rosie's like dance, 4 5 year old dance class or whatever it was just like continual spewing of words. And
Mm-hmm.
now we do this, and now you're right, like, and so that's not how children really learn. Children learn through observation and practice. And so we've gotten rid of that completely. And and 100 years ago, children learned through both, right? Children would learn to read through a little bit of instruction, do some math through some instruction, but then they would learn all these other skills and life skills, and they put the math and the reading into practice through observation and practice, right? So it's really only been the like last 40 years in our generation, is really kind of the one, like the first generation that came from a highly instructional environment, right? So it hasn't been that many generations where kids have just basically stopped learning through observation and practice.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the
Mm-hmm.
anthropologists can actually see like the repercussions of this. Like kids kind of have lost, like by the time they get to like high school, they've kind of lost the observational learning skills.
Well,
Um,
will you explain, like, just a quick explanation of like a day in the life at your school that involves observation and practice? Like, what does it look like?
yeah. So first of all, I mean, one of the things I do like about the Montessori system is like it's it is this very autonomous way of learning. I didn't really understand it. I spent a couple of weeks at this Montessori school in Mexico that was incredible, by this woman who mixes it with a kind of an indigenous view of life. So it's not just like I mean, Montessori is this principle, right, that she had of learning. So our school uses that. So what happens in the morning, under the Texas law, kids have to work for 3 hours. So again, that kind of shows you like how much actual learning they're doing at school that the government thinks they're doing. So they're there at our public school for like 8 hours a day, but they're learning, the government thinks, for 3 hours. So what is happening for the other 5 hours? Gym, eating, maybe music, but I mean, what is happening, right? They're not learning, right?
Yeah, and music for boys especially is the worst because those music teachers seem to hate boys. I coach so many parents. Yeah. Okay.
So,
I mean, yeah.
So they from 9 until about noon, they do the Montessori curriculum, which is essentially they have all of these like workstations and projects that they're working on, and they kind of voluntarily choose them. Sometimes they're encouraged, and they've been taught through time how to do them. So there's math, there's grammar, there's reading.
What about the argument? What about the argument for the parent who says, and I hear this all the time, "Oh, my child has ADHD. They wouldn't be good in that environment because they're not good at, being self-led. So that environment."
So I mean, being
wouldn't work for them.
self-led. I mean, we all have we all have tendencies or not tendencies, but it's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
If the child has never done it and has been told what to do from 8 o'clock in the morning until they go to bed at night, which is a lot of American children, they will not learn it. And there's data that shows this.
Right.
That like to learn to be self-motivated, you have to practice it. You have to observe it and you have to practice it. And little children are really good at practicing it. And that's why they scream at you when you try to tell them what to do.
Right.
Because they want to practice this. Mm-hmm. And they have this desire to practice being self-sufficient, taking initiation, having drive. And if the parent has stuck a screen in front of them or told them what to do at every moment, they will not learn this skill because the screen tells you what to do. It tells your brain what to do.
That's right.
There's very, very little self-sufficiency and self-drive there, right? So I would tell that parent that the child needs to learn how to do it. And in fact, parents have emailed me about how Hungather Parent is like really helped kids with ADHD because they need more autonomy. There's all this data that shows this, right? There's like this amazing story of this little boy who had ADHD really bad. And then one of the teachers, an amazing teacher, said, "Okay, why don't you help me with the class and be my assistant?" And it's like they need this like. So I would say the child, it's just a skill. It's a skill. And so there's that. And you're right. Many kids there's differences in kind of their just innate ability to take initiative, but a lot of it is environment. It's just, how much have they had practice at it and doing things autonomously. So we cook, we garden, we take care of chickens, we do experiments. I try to tie in the practical skills to what they're doing. Learning to read a recipe, go to the store, buy the ingredients, figure out how much you need for the group of people, come back, read that recipe, and put it into action takes incredible math and reading skills and planning, right? And just learning to do that gives a child an amazing amount of knowledge, like what we think of as like academic knowledge. I mean, I
and
kind of like
how engaging.
Yeah. And then they want to do it. And then you've got food. And then you've got a skill that you can go home and make yourself food and you can make your family food. I mean, you can make a whole like math curriculum around recipes, right? There's conversions, there's fractions, there's multiplication, and so we put those things in, and then the money, we put those things into action in the afternoon. And then I realized that the 12-year-old boys need more exercise. So I've been implementing more. The young kids, you take them to the park and they run around, but the 12-year-old boys just sit there. So I've been doing more PE kind of stuff too. But that's how it goes. And it's,
they actually remember the math and the reading because they're so engaged when they're, and they're so motivated because it's task oriented and they're working together. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's not just like math because there's a piece of paper, right? A lot of kids some kids, they're motivated by grades and just learning, will learn math and be excited about it just on a piece of paper. But a lot of kids need like a real purpose. Like, why are we doing this? Why does it mean anything? Right. And it's remarkable. Or just having the child copy the recipe. Okay, write down what we need. Or, I mean, we just do things like this, and we did like a germination experiment with beans, and then we planted the beans, and they're still growing. Okay, can you tell her I'll be down in 5 minutes? Sorry, Rosie just gave me this note. Judy is here. This is another great way to teach kids reading. Okay, just tell them 5 minutes left. Okay, I'll be done.
Rosie,
in 5 minutes.
I promise we'll wrap up.
Yeah,
I love
this.
So
I have Rosie write me memos. That's how she learns to write. Write me memos while I'm working.
I mean, Rosie's 8. She's 8 still? Or she's 8. Yeah. Rosie's 8. She's receiving the guests. Michaeleen's got the neighbors coming over, and they're all arriving, and Rosie's answering the door, receiving them. Then she's coming up to mommy's office. She's giving a memo. They're here. Like, she knows, she's not like, mommy. Right? Like, right. How did she learn all of that civility and maturity, right? Like, you've given her the opportunity. You've taught her how to do those things.
That's right. Yeah. Practice and observation, and it's taken time. Like, this memo thing is new. So like good. The last couple months, because she couldn't really write before. But now she can send me memos. And like, this is how we learn. This is how we learn to read and write.
Right.
Like,
and she's feeling things. And she's feeling useful and valuable. Like, mom's working upstairs. She's answering the door. She's coming up and letting mom know. So now, like, the kid's not just going, mommy, when are you going to pay attention to me? Like, this is a kid that feels like a really valuable family member. And she is, right?
Useful. Like, useful.
For real. It's useful.
Okay, go get 30, Randy. Sorry.
You live your life. You learned a lot in Hunt Gather Parent when you were writing it and researching, and that's how you live your life now. Okay, I love it. Go be with your neighbors.
Okay, have a good weekend, and thank you. And we'll talk. I do want to get to the point of like the secret to getting kids to be enjoying children when you're teaching them, and maybe next time.
Yeah. Wait, you want to get to the point of what? Like, people enjoying their children when you're teaching them?
I think a lot of like I think a lot of like kind of hesitation to teaching children is like you don't enjoy being with them, and I think that there's like a secret to it. So.
Okay, well, there's a cliffhanger. There's a cliffhanger. We'll get to it.
All right, Randy, have a good weekend. Okay,
you too.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you picked up some tips, tools, maybe some baby steps for creating more balance and boundaries in your life. And I just wanted to let you know, if you want to continue moving the needle forward in creating this for yourself, having a happier household, I want you to go to my website and check out mastermindparenting.com. We have 3 beginning programs, and if you need some accountability and more support, then please look for the one that would be a good fit for you. And as always, we're on all the social channels under Mastermind Parenting. On Instagram, it's mastermind_parenting. And, periodically I do pop up on different Instagram lives, Facebook lives, where I give you teaching and coaching, and I love engaging with you live to help you help your strong-willed kids so that they can feel better, because when they feel better, they do better. And I love, love, love getting to know you guys. So thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Super, super appreciative.